My name is Björn Westerberg, and I'm CEO of ASTOC, the Association of Swedish Train Operating Companies. And what is that? Well, it's the association representing the commercial operators in Sweden. We have competition on track and competition for track, so we're representing the ones who compete on track. It's both freight and passenger traffic. It's about 44 members. I'm reflecting with all the speakers and the information I got so far when I get here. I think you already have said with the films, movies that you are shown, or the speeches, that shows more or less everything that I plan to say. So I think I should go home. I prepared plenty of slides on the flight over here. So I thought I had a half an hour or the whole afternoon to show you slides about Sweden and my family, my vacation, and so on. So I realized I had to cut this dramatically when coming here, and you are much more advanced in your thinking. Myself, I entered the railway business about a little more than 10 years ago. I started working with the Swedish state-owned railway company SJ, the passenger traffic operator, and I started working with ERTMS signaling system. We had bought new trains, and we needed to see that this worked properly with this new system that nobody really could spell, ERTMS or whatever, and we needed to try that out to see where we're heading. So we put a group together and really tested all over Sweden, and we learned so much about the railway tracks. And after a while, I was heading the high-speed rail procurement, new trains for Sweden, and then I became head of strategy for SJ. So I've been in this position now for 3 years with ASTOC, and we're also working a lot with the European Union in Brussels and our organization that we're a member of, CER, that we're currently the chair of. So you mentioned a couple of things here in the morning, the year of multimodality, and also present challenges, present opportunities. You mentioned China. I was in China last week. Everything is about connectivity, and they are at least 5 years ahead of us if you think about social media. Most of you have looked at social media in the way, but how many of you have WeChat? You better start downloading WeChat, because that's going to be the tool for the future. Just for your information. Key takeaway. Okay, so we are right in the middle of it, someone said, and I think that's correct. We need really to turn what we do into long-term relationships. So, just ASTOC, rail traffic in Sweden, Swedish railway sector and liberalization, and our freight strategy for the future. Together with the government, we have developed a freight strategy. And then some ideas on the potential for Latvia. These are our members, about 42, sometimes 41, and then sometimes 43, depending on how things are. So they are our members. It's both freight and passenger, as I mentioned. I also have some associated members, like the big suppliers, Alstom, Bombardier, and Saldo, and so on. This is Sweden. We have more than 12,000 kilometers railway track. We have most single track, but about 2,000 kilometer double track. 85% is electrified. We'll go into that in a moment. And it's generally multi-purpose use. It's mixed traffic. So long distance, regional, and freight service are mixed, and that creates a certain issues about traffic planning and so on, operations. This is the way we electrified the railway in Sweden. So we started very early, 2 centuries ago, 1890, with the local line and just testing, because coal was getting so expensive. And we didn't have much coal in Sweden, but we had a lot of hydropower. So the idea was to use the hydropower in some way. So the big test was 1915, the Malmbanan, that's in the north, with the iron ore. So it was much cheaper to use the hydropower. They signed up, SJ, the state-owned company, signed up for 239 waterfalls. These are the waterfalls that are going to generate electricity for Swedish railways. And that meant also that we have to deal with the transmission over long distance, and that's why they also selected the lower frequency, 1/3 of normal. So we have the same system as Germany, as 16 2/3 hertz. Then the real expansion came in the 20s and 30s. They started electrifying the major lines of Sweden. And then that also developed industry. First we had foreign suppliers, but then, you know, the A in ABB, that stands for ASEA, that was the Swedish sort of electrical engineering company. So that started really a business for like 100 years for them to develop locomotives, transmission, and everything that is connected to this. And then 1942, it was for the first line that went all the way up here so there was a significant event during World War II. But then 50s expansion, massive investments, and 1960 we had maybe the most comprehensive electrified railway and very strong industrial development as well. But then in the 70s, 80s, it diminished. It was already not any new infrastructure. It was already built out. And then we could see more going into the maintenance phase. Okay, this is Sweden, freight transport. If you look on the colors, you can see the sort of the amount. You have the blue is track. Sorry. So the blue is track, and then red is rail. And then we have the shipping, and here's the passenger transport flows. You can look at it in another way. You can see here, you can see the heavy cargo is the red ones, and the yellow ones is the most combi or other means of goods. And here we see the ports and how the cargo flows with the ports. So it's basically heavy freight transports. It's an integral part of the value chain of most companies. It's many times the only option, like the iron ore from Kiruna to Narvik, Norway. It's about 90% of European Union iron ore pellets. And there's no redundancies. It has to work. You have the lighter freight transport, the several transport modes, the zero multimodality. This is what this is really all about. Combination of transports to make successful a successful industry with low transport cost instead of everybody charging as much as they can themselves. But you need to have short lead times. You need to have the short transport times, high delivery, just-in-time flexibility, and there's a strong competition between transport modes. That's something we experience in Sweden right now. And one thing is important to highlight, I will get back to that, it's the high cost of terminal handling. But we see strong growth in the sector for the next 10, 20 years. So, since 2000, both passenger and freight have experienced strong growth. Important factors for this has been structural reforms, market opening, I get back to that, but also a lot of infrastructure investments. Low infrastructure charges. We have among the lowest in Europe, and still we are not profitable in the cargo sector. And then we have strong regional development. All the regions that can charge taxes to the people that live there, they say, oh, the people who live here, they should, of course, be able to come to work, to commute by trains. We need our own trains. So everybody's building and buying, building track and buying trains. Which leads to that we got very high proportion of taxes goes to transport. And we see that maybe not as sustainable in the future when it comes to mix of if you're going to spend money on hospitals or care for the elders and so on. So this is the market development. You see the passenger traffic has grown significantly. We had a dip in the freight traffic during the Lehman Brothers years, but it rebounded. But we see we don't know really what will happen in the near future. But freight transport development, we see it positive. The national statistics and the plans from the government, they plan to see that about 30% increase for transport until 2030. 60% to 2050. So this is really a sector. But now we passed a law in Sweden that says, okay, guys, you have to sharpen up. It's not okay to just waste so much energy on CO2 emissions. So now you have to reduce CO2 emissions in transport by 70% until 2030. You think about 70%, including the growth. If you're going to reduce that, 70% is actually the amount, everything that we do today. Take that away and just look for growth. That's 70%. Is this possible? Then you have to look for technologies, you have to look for other means also, not just to reduce the activity in the economy. This is what happened in Sweden. There was a PhD thesis about the Swedish deregulation or liberalization. It was called the Accidental Deregulation. It was not a plan. Now the European Union is planning the fourth railway package, separate operators and infrastructure. And we did that already in 1988. Yeah, and then we split up the cargo buses, restaurants, ferries, hotels in different parts. So we get several different companies, and these are in public ownership. We have SJ, we have the freight company Green Cargo, we have the stations, is owned by a special company, a real estate company, and we have Trafikverket, which is the infra manager, and here's a maintenance company. And then we have rolling stock maintenance, we have another rolling stock maintenance, and we have a computer company, etc., etc. So everything was split up. This is the way how I learned what's going on in Brussels. So this is what you should remember if you think about this. Look at this map. Do we have market opening? Yes or no? Is we positive with competition? Or should we have an integrated model or separated model for infrastructure? Everything under one roof or separated? So here is Sweden. Here is my association and Trafikverket, and here's the European Commission aiming at with the fourth railway package. Then you can map your own organization where you are. So I said we are sharing the CER, and the chairman is my chairman also, Christer Fritzson, CEO of SJ. We have a number of priorities. Implementation, of course, of the fourth railway package, the technical pillar, improving conditions for ticketing, data, innovation, digitalization, and also develop the rail freight corridors. So Air Baltica is very important. And of course also improving intermodal competition. This is our sector. This is the way it looks like. If you split up, you get a lot of actors. And then you need to combine that. You need to work together. It's like Outlook management. It takes 2 weeks to get a meeting because before you could go down the corridor and knock on the door. But now everybody's sitting in different locations and you have to get to meetings. So it takes a while, but sometimes it's discuss, is this really efficient? But so far it's been really effective. So efficient or effective, you really have to think about that. So here we have here's the train operating companies I represent, rolling stock owners, manufacturers. They have their own organization called Sweetrain. Then we have the infrastructure maintenance. They also have their own association. We have properties, train stations. We have the regional public transport agencies. And these are the ones who have grown most. And then we have the infrastructure manager. We have the transport authority. And I have the Ministry of Industry and Transport that governs the whole system. So just a few very brief words about the organization. We have also separated. We have also national multimodal authority in terms of Trafikverket. They have road and rail. So not just the railway organization. Horizontal separation, I mentioned. Freight services and commercial passenger services are subject to open access competition. And all of those who have the open access, they have their own rolling stock. So they own the rolling stock. And the role of the public sector is still very strong. But there are a lot of challenges right now. Reduced volumes, margins, loss-making companies. Some of my members are not very happy. They're making a lot of losses. We have a maintenance backlog for infrastructure. We need to develop longer and heavier trains. Competition with truck traffic, longer and heavier trucks coming. We have a low-wage cabotage by road. We have high cost increases also from the government. It's like the silo management. Everybody is preparing something they think is good, and there come a lot of cost increases from the European Commission, and then from the own government, and then from the infrastructure holders. So someone's going to pay It's not as before. It has to be, commercial. That means that revenues has to be higher than cost. We have the funding of ERTMS on-board equipment, the wagon noise measures coming, and access to services, for example. So we are afraid that we lose market share to road when we are fighting to increase rail in Europe and in our country, to get more freight from road to rail. So we need a vision. So we started discussing this. Where is the vision for society? And we call it Prosperity 2050 and create sort of a future-proof Sweden. And the requirements for the transport system should have increased availability and be a really world-class logistics chain. If you're a small country somewhere else and you have to compete over the global markets, you really have to be good at to do what you do. And then, of course, how can the railway contribute to this? So we said a vision, we developed a vision, and we said we're going to double the freight, and then we're going to triple the passenger traffic. That was our aim. This is the report. This is actually from north of Sweden, just outside Kiruna. So if you look on the market, we have 13 freight companies. We have 40% new entrants. Number of employees is reduced, one third. Almost the turnover of employees have reached almost doubled. We have the distance per employee also almost doubled. We use rolling stock much more, but we still have low quality and low profitability. So we did one of the first things I did was to do a financial study of now we could really see that here we have growth value added, and we have finance, and we see the freight. The road is doing very okay, and passenger rail okay, and passenger road buses okay, but the freight was not doing fine. So we need to take some measures. We developed our plan. We'll start in lobbying the government. We said we need to increase the reliability, and then the utilization, and then the profitability. Then we can have growth and competitiveness. There are 10 actions that we addressed to meet today's challenges as well. Increased reliability. I want to go into detail. You get these slides you can look at. You have to do some things yourself. You have to think about the sector. That's my members. What can we do? And then the national plan from Trafikverket, society and safety. What can they do? The rail must be attractive. Why should I, as an industrial buyer, buy freight on train? If it's complicated, it's expensive, it doesn't work, doesn't have time, and so on. So you really have to improve the minimum standards. So this is our vision, how to improve the infrastructure in different areas with ports, and then also if you look on the passenger traffic with high-speed lines, we have Stockholm, Oslo, we have Stockholm to Malmö, Copenhagen, Hamburg, and so on. So these are the visions for the future for the Swedish system. And then the minister launched this summer a national freight strategy. Very briefly, I would say that Swedish industry have to be competitive. We have developed a national freight council that I am a member of, appointed by the government. Have to be efficient. Research and competence is important to manage the industry. Intermodality, nodes for transshipment. Trafikverket have to improve automatization, transshipment, and get incentives for the future. So, potential for Latvia. I have a few slides. As I have a few minutes left. So, we have the fourth rail package. Adopt to that fast. There's the trends also in your favor. Containerization, intermodality, trailerization. We have the Rail Baltica, the new corridor that goes also north-south. We have the Far East cargo. You need to have attractive infrastructure, efficient freight, low terminal handling. And then we have technology, hypermodality. I will tell you what that is. A2, blockchain, China's new digital Silk Road as well, how to adapt to that. And we have a new Swedish port that opened in 2020. So, rail versus road, rail versus sea, we see that there's a potential with the fourth railway package. We have the new corridor, plus Rail Baltica from Trieste and up. There's a lot of cargo that can go this way. We see that a lot of cargo discussions are already started. How will we distribute it? Who will take care of this and that? We're slicing the cake before we have it already. We have China, of course. This is the big discussion. How much will this be? Northern route, southern route, how much will come? From my traveling in China last week, it's at least 4 times today what we have today. It will increase massive. So it's not just WeChat, it's preparing for the future. A lot of new terminals in China developing. And I think especially this very well connection here for Latvia with the borders of where we have today. We have a lot of waiting time. China is focused on mostly in Germany, but then you have everything else that can be shipped from China to other locations. But you need attractive infrastructure for efficient freight. You have to address, come up with something, and that's a good standard of infrastructure. You need efficient access points, good administration, operational rules, so both hard and soft factors. There are a couple of minimum, if you look on the minimum targets from TNT and rails infrastructure, but also you can think about it in a more wider way about how to optimize the system, how to optimize the infrastructure, and you can even go a little bit further on different dimensions. And of course, terminal handling. But it's very costly to switch cargo from one mode to another, so this has to be very efficient managed. And China is building a new Silk Road. This is about not just about this 5G. It's fiber. It's a lot of things. And I think if you can tap into this somehow, this increases your potential for the future. Where are we in terms of digital life cycle? Are we really ahead of the curve, or are we moving up the curve? Where do we have the tipping point? We see a lot of transport activity actors, early adopters, advanced. But where are we? Are we Jurassic Park, or where are we? We need really to move ahead. It could be other disruptions. Some of the previous speakers spoke about online platforms. We have the expansion of large tech companies. We had advanced robotics, asset sharing like Uber, autonomous vehicles coming, additive manufacturing like 3D printing and so on. So a lot of things that we have to keep an eye on. IoT is something to speak about in China. What is IoT? It's a buzzword, but you think about application analytics, you think about cloud connectivity, you think about devices and sensors. Okay, but then if you address that to the transport sector or energy, can things develop horizontally or vertically in a new way? Or who's going to earn money on this? This is something to think about. And then hypermodal transportation. If you look at the intermodality, but then you add intelligence as well to optimize, to integrate, make it autonomous and so on. That I came across this phrase, hypermodal transportation. Maybe Latvia is going to be the first country with hypermodal transportation. And today's freight traffic to Nynäshamn goes to Ventspils, for example. And it's E22 highways and TNT network for rails. And then I spoke to a couple of industry operators, shippers and ports in Sweden. So what do you think of? What would enable you to increase more traffic? What do you need? So they said a couple of things. Operator shippers want solution for Scandinavia. It goes via Poland, Belarus. Large volume to Germany gets stuck at Brest, Malasice, and the too long waiting times. It could be 4 days and so on. There are opportunity for other options. Okay, other options. Disadvantage with just one freight connection. Attractive with the Rail Baltica. A huge interest in Sweden to find solution to connect Scandinavia with China and Asia. China needs to increase freight 4 times until 2024. China is very interested to connect and invest in the Baltic states. And then you have to be careful what you wish for. If you, sometimes you get the big brother as well who tell you what to do if you take too much money, if you get the balance there. And Riga is very well positioned for the future, especially for the ferry connections to Sweden, if they expand. And there were some suggestions about the medium-sized container shipments have a frequent. The one that goes to Nynäshamn is like 12 shipments a week, if you could think about that somehow. I'm sure there are entrepreneurs. We have interference by Russia and Poland, also developing being very competitive infrastructure to 2024. And Swedish companies such as ABB, Volvo, the whole IKEA, among others, are very positive. And they think they really can use also sending things to China. China is in the verge of, they have a very strong global demand. I've been investing, building. But now we see less global demand, so they are moving to domestic demand, and then they need to be more productive. They have to increase their productivity, and that's a completely different ballgame. But if they can manage that, then there will a lot of things be required to China, export things to China, much more. So there's a potential there as well for the next 10 years. So, final picture. So where do we go from this? We have a new port, the Nordic Gateway Opportunity. You're sitting here. You have it. It's in front of you. And tap into this network. And also, we have a new port. Stockholm-Norvik Harbour is going to be the new port for rolling goods. So going to serve the whole this region. So it is a very good entry point to develop this. And then it opens in 2020. And they can accommodate the largest vessels moving in the Baltic Sea. And the railway is connected also here. So there's opportunities here. So my advice, think big, start small, act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Westerberg.